In this video, I'm going to show you why the impact of this full moon in Aries is not going to be televised and how to actually take advantage of these powerful transits. So let's jump straight into it. Now remember, in the new moon in Libra video, I shared with you that there's an upcoming social unrest. I also said to you that there is a recognition of our value exchange that are no longer working anymore. Realizing that the contracts that we are doing in our society, in our structure, have become broken. And I also pointed to this being an evolutionary necessity that's essentially unavoidable. Now we've actually reached a halfway point, an integration point in this lunar cycle, where we're going to be proposed with a question, a choice. Do we stay in Wonderland and begin to deeply explore our true authentic self? Or do we surrender to the fates of our unconscious drives and live out our lives in a conditioned identity? So the first one actually requires you to realize that you have the courage to take a leap of faith and follow your inner truth. And with Pluto and Mercury now turning direct alongside the last exact square between Uranus and Saturn, this energetic wave that we have right now is literally allowing us to experience deep psychological and emotional changes, to free ourselves from our internal limitations and to experience a deeper state of empowerment. So it's pretty powerful right now. So how about we jump into the astrological aspects and see where these evolutionary drives are coming from. Let's take a look at Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus, riding the waves of freedom. Now, this aspect over here has actually been in our collective field for nearly 2 years, where it's actually made 4 exact conjunctions. So we're actually entering the last precise square alignment here. And the dialogue between these two planets is intensifying, and it's also bringing about a new series of collective and individual changes, right? This is where this pressure is coming from these outer planets of Uranus and Saturn. If you have observed your life over the last year and a half and seen the limitations that you've had to deal with and how you've innovated and broken out of those limitations, you've understood this square. This square has been at the forefront of helping people break down emotional and psychological challenges that they have within themselves, trauma responses, and it's given them the possibility and the potential to experience freedom. So this is really the freedom from limitations. And it would have come through adopting an internalized sense of responsibility. That it's not everybody else out there that's coming to save you, it's you, and it starts with you. The trines to Venus and the Sun right now is just reflecting where you have realized this internal change within yourself. And now you're able to actually begin shifting to and turning towards new experiences of reality that are more empowering to you because you've done this inner work. So this transit over here has been really, really powerful in many ways. It's also the reason why I say that the revolution will not be televised, because right now you can see how this energy is erupting into the collective. And you can see like places like Iran, many other places in the world are having revolutions and the internet just goes out. And nobody gets access to what's actually going on. The voices are being repressed. And so here you see the expression of the distortion coming to the surface. Where you can take individual power is internally within yourself here. Okay, let's take a look at the full moon in Libra, and where you can see the moon conjunct Chiron and Venus, of course, conjuncting the sun. Venus has actually been following the sun throughout Libra and will continue to do that until the solar eclipse in Scorpio. This is very significant. This Venus aspect has been traveling with the sun, saying to us, hey, I'm really important here and I need a lot of attention, okay? Just so you know that Libra and Venus is co-ruling Taurus, and we can see Uranus and Taurus here. So Uranus is showing us what Venus is evolving, and that's why there's an aspect between Venus and the sun and Uranus. That's where it's called thrown back, right, on this graph over here. Now, this is the integration point that I talked about, the choice. Aries is all about the state of becoming. It's a new direction. It's unknown. We're in a constant state of becoming. So to have this moon conjunct Chiron, it highlights the Chiron point, but it also opposes the Venus-Sun contact, which again points to Uranus. And we know that Uranus and Saturn are making a connection. So in holistic terms, this full moon is bringing to us this potent shift in our reality. It's revealing to us where we either feel oppressed or where we feel free. And that's what Chiron's message here is. And what you've got to understand about Chiron too is that when the moon conjuncts Chiron, it's really difficult for us to experience the depth of Chiron if we're not seeing the relationship between Saturn and Uranus. In other words, we're not seeing the relationship between having a very responsible and emotional and mature outlook on life that accepts responsibility, so that we can actually house the Uranian individuation process. So what this aspect will do is create a response to the injustices in the world, but it will also give us the power to see where we can take our own power back. So the question here is, how can you recognize where these patterns in you are holding you back, where your condition's holding you back, your conditioning is holding you back and telling you you're no good, you can't do this, and you're listening to that as opposed to taking this leap of faith and jumping out and exploring and experiencing and living out your freedom. Sorry to interrupt you during this transit report, but I've actually got an important message for you. Identifying the location of the current Venus transit in your natal chart will give you a clue as to what you're currently working on an internal and external relationship basis. So an example, if this is in your third house, you'll most likely be working on your value structure in communication. And this will actually feel like you've come to a natural completion point in which you realize some needs or some values are no longer important to you anymore. And you actually start to question whether or not this is essential. This process that we undergo is what actually shapes and reshapes our relationship dynamics on a constant basis. All right, back to you, Simon, in the studio. Thank you very much, Simon, for that piece of information. And yes, onward with the transit report. So here we are looking at Pluto moving direct at 26 of Capricorn. It's naturally trining Mercury at 28 degrees of Virgo. We see Mercury in a direct opposition to Jupiter and Neptune. And then we also see a 90-degree opening square with Mars there at the bottom. This aspect teaches us and shows us where there is a choice that can be made around our thinking. Do we follow our inner truth? Do we explore and allow our inner truth to guide us? Or do we still feel oppressed by our own conditioning? And the reason why I wrote closing cycle here is because essentially we are at a closing cycle where the thinking patterns and the ways in which we understand our reality and our relationship to ourselves as human beings is shifting. It's changing. You can see it in the collective. And the question here is, do you choose to internalize your power and pursue your life through that lens? Or do you still run the scripts of destructive thinking? Now what we're looking at is the party happening in Aries. So in the new moon in Libra, everybody was hanging out there in the Libra side. Now we're coming back to the Aries side and saying, it's our turn, we're going to have our party now, right? And so here we have Jupiter literally 1 degree retrograde, just about enter Pisces, and then you have Chiron, moon, new phase energy. So again, something that's completing and something that's moving forward. The message with Chiron moon, as I said, is to take a leap of faith and to embody your desire to move forward in freedom. And the Jupiter Neptune is reflecting the culmination of old philosophical and perspectives that we've embodied in the past and no longer serve us going forward. And finally, in this aspect over here, we can see the natural inconjunct that takes place between the conditioned self, the attachments of the past. This is the South Node in Scorpio, the Chiron in Aries that says to us, hey, there's an opportunity to go and to break free from those patterns, to break free from those bondings, to experience freedom from our limitations. And the opposition between Uranus and the South Node is the point of evolution. It's the confrontation of the self. It's to realize your self-reliance, to realize your self-preservation, to realize that you have the capacity within you to experience a new direction within yourself. So are you going to choose that? Here are 3 things that you can reflect on for this full moon in Aries energy. Number 1, the revolution will not be televised. This means that the power structures and old outdated structures will not see revolution. They will see unrest, social disobedience, they will see lack of control, and they will want to reinforce that into the social structure. So this is not about a reaction to the injustices, but it's actually an internal reflection and response to what can empower yourself that leads to a change in direction. Number 2, what is the place or area in your life that you want to change right now? What comes up for you? Think about the agency that you can embody and the step-by-step process that you can take to lead you to the direction you want to go. And finally, and remember, out of all of it, your soul journey is yours, nobody else's. You're here to explore and discover the unfolding of your experience. So take that leap of faith. You have the courage in you. And if you don't feel like you have the courage over there, I've got a video over here that you can click on that teaches you about how to actually lead your life with authenticity.